Hi everyone! So as you probably know, the Vampire Diaries had its series finale this past Friday, and while the final episode wrapped everything up fabulously, there are a few things that have kind of bugged me over the last 8 years in terms of the book versus the show. So from day one, I really had to separate the plotline of what was happening in Mystic Falls on TV versus what happened in the book in Fell's Church. Otherwise, I would have gone insane because I'm nitpicky like that. Travelers, stylists, heretics, Gemini witches, sirens, none of them ever existed in the books. The only villains that actually made it from writing to the screen were Damon, Katherine, and Klaus. So pretty much everything that happens from season 4 onward, never in the books. That being said, I'm mostly going to touch on some major character difference and really not the plot lines, because then we would be here all day. So I'm going to start with Damon and Stefan. Book Damon is described as being very pale with dark features, dark hair, black eyes, while TV's Damon has those really, really blue eyes. This last season of the Vampire Diaries has really been focused on Damon trying to be good, trying to earn his redemption to the point where he's willing to go to hell so that Stefan doesn't. That would never happen in the books. Ever. Book Damon is never quite good. He has his periods where he does help Elena and Stefan and the rest of the heroes, but that's mostly when he's trying to make up for the crappy stuff that he's already done. Book Damon wouldn't have been willing to go to hell in place of Stefan, especially if it meant that he had to give up Elena. Book Damon actually did send Stefan to hell. Literally. So he could swoop in and snag the girl. Obviously, that didn't happen in the show. Stefan's character was pretty much the same between the books and the show, so not a whole lot of complaint there, but his relationship with Damon and Elena were changed. Stefan and Damon in the books were born 500 years ago in Italy, instead of Virginia during about the Civil War era. And if you've seen the show, then you know that they were turned into vampires by getting shot by their father while trying to rescue Katherine. I think I like their transformation in the book a little better because it shows kind of that hate that they have toward each other. They were both with Katherine and she faked their own death, so they blamed each other and they got in a whole sword fight and actually stabbed each other. I personally think that's awesome. It just shows so much more of this dynamic between the two brothers. Also, the whole thing with the brothers and the cure was totally flipped. In the book, it's Stefan that wants to become human because he actually wants to be human, but also so he can be with Elena instead of this other way around. Which brings us to her. Elena in the books is this blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl who's really kind of vain and honestly a little bit of a bitch. She lives with her Aunt Judith, Judith's husband Robert Maxwell, and her toddler sister Margaret, which means Jenna and Jeremy never exist in the writing. And honestly, I kind of like having Jeremy there instead of having this little baby, because there's really not a whole lot of plot you can do with a baby like they did with Jeremy. TV Elena obviously has brown hair and brown eyes. She's kind, loyal, she takes care of the people around her. She's broken at the start of the show, but she doesn't lash out and hurt other people. I'm not saying that TV Elena is a saint, but she's a hell of a lot nicer than Book Elena. One thing that made the love triangle between Elena, Damon, and Stefan really memorable in my mind and really unique was that it was always Stefan. In the show, she ends up with Damon, but I like how in the books, she stays with Stefan the whole time. Yes, she has these moments where she has feelings for Damon, but it was so different that she doesn't go back and forth between these two guys, that she's stuck with the one guy that she actually truly loves. So that is kind of one of my bigger disappointments with that. But it's drama, it's love triangle. You gotta have something. Another thing that makes the Vampire Diaries really different is its story goes on without Elena. In the book, she dies as a vampire in a fight with Katherine that kills them both, and she ends up as this sort of ghost or guardian angel that watches over her friends and keeps Klaus' ghost away from them. Klaus is another character that always is evil the entire time he's in the series, and he definitely would not have had his own spin-off series. But can't really complain because I love the originals, or she's reborn as a human. The last 2 seasons of the show wrote her off by putting her in a magical coma, but I really love how the show and the book were both able to continue without one of its main characters. That's something that very few series would have ever survived. And of course, you can't talk about Elena without talking about Katherine. So I mentioned earlier that Katherine faked her own death while the Salvatore brothers were both human, and she kind of does this in the show, but not as dramatically. She's really selfish in both the show and the book. The book describes her as more of a sweet, soft, innocent girl instead of the big bad that everyone's afraid of. She plays both brothers, but where Katherine in the show is always just kind of after Stefan, Damon's just kind of there on the side. But Katherine wants both of them. She really wants this like weird three-way thing with all of them when they're together forever. And the brothers kind of just end up getting jealous of each other. So she dies, trying to hope that that'll bring them together again. And totally backfires. She's a little more badass in the TV series, and her death was because she's on the run from Klaus. It's more to save her own skin than this kind of wishful thinking that she'll end up getting her way eventually, and the brothers will be friends again. And then the whole idea of the doppelganger plays out in both book and TV show, but in the book it says that the second lookalike, so Elena, is kind of just an element that tortures the first just by existing. And that's one of the many reasons that Katherine hates Elena so much. Other than, simple Katherine jealousy. So next up I'm going to talk about Bonnie. The book version of Bonnie is this fragile, caring, bubbly little redhead girl descended from Celtic Druids, which is where she gets her magic from. TV version is a lot tougher. She's no nonsense. She's like one of the stronger characters in the series. She's African American with dark hair, dark eyes, gets her power from her witch ancestors. Both Bonnies sort of end up having some sort of relationship with Damon. In the book, like I said, she's kind of fragile, and so Damon sees her as somebody that he can protect, and he kind of wants to protect. In the show, they become best friends after their little stay in the prison world. And then there's Caroline. Caroline, I think, had the biggest personality change. I absolutely hated her in the book, but she's honestly my absolute favorite character on the show. Remember the competitive, jealous, snobby human in season 1 of the TV series? Yeah, she stayed like that throughout the entire book series. The book Caroline would sell at her friends in a heartbeat, and she's actually ends up not even being friends with Elena and Bonnie. Her jealousy and insecurities just really drove a wedge through them, so she's not as big of a character in the books as she's in the show. In the show, she really became this awesome, badass vampire who actually really cares about everybody around her, especially her daughters, which I really, really like that they were able to incorporate that. In the book, she gets pregnant by Tyler and ends up having half-human wolf hybrid puppies. In the show, she's magically pregnant with Rick's kids, but I like seeing this motherly side of her in both, actually. Tyler is more of a minor character in the books, so there's really not a whole lot to talk about his change. Alaric in the books is a lot younger than he is in the show. In the show, he becomes a hunter because his wife, who happens to be Elena's mother, was killed by a vampire. In the books, he's in his early 20s. He's not too much older than the rest of the cast. And he's more academic instead of the super awesome vampire slayer that we see on TV. In the books, Alaric also falls in love with Meredith Phyllis. I think this is my biggest regret for the show, is not having this character. Meredith was my favorite in the books, and they sort of had her as Dr. Meredith Fell in one of the seasons, but she was not nearly as cool. Meredith Phyllis is one of Elena's best friends. She's a Latina with dark hair, dark eyes, olive skin, and she's always able to be cool and calm, which in Mystic Falls is crazy because things are always happening. People are dropping dead, and she's able to work past it and figure it out and find a solution to any problem that the heroes are having. She's the one that you'd want around when there's danger, and she's the only character that actually scares Damon. There's a scene in one of the books where Damon's talking to the villain, who's a kitsune, which is a fox spirit, and Damon is pretty much gambling away Fell's church and said you can have the entire town except for Elena and Bonnie, and the kitsune asks, well, what about Meredith? And Damon pretty much freaks out thinking that there's a possibility she could be there because he's afraid of her. And I love that. I love that there is a strong female character that scares Damon Salvatore. So there you have it. Those are the biggest character differences between the book and the show that I saw. I was really hoping that the TV series would draw a little more from the books in the last season by having the characters take a little trip to hell, especially because it's all leading up to hell is coming. Really wanted them to actually go there. But I love that Katherine came back, and I really liked all the cameos from the people that had died in that ending sequence of everybody's happily ever after. And I do think that the show finished up really nicely. So that's all I had. Bye!